I'm Chip Rogers, and welcome to the AAHOA Educational Experience. Joining me this week is AAHOA President Fred Schwartz. Fred, thanks for being with us. And Nitin Shaw with Imperial Investments, and finally Anil Patel with North Star Hotels Group. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. In our last show last week, we talked a lot about what is AAHOA, what does AAHOA do for its members, but one of the most important things AAHOA can do for its members, particularly during this time where it seems like government has such a, or I guess better put, has its tentacles in almost everything that is going on, is government affairs and managing the process of making sure that AAHOA members' interests are protected at every level of government. Fred, tell us why government affairs is so important to small business owners, hotel owners at this point in time.
Well, put it bluntly, businesses will be flattened if we're not there to protect our interests. I mean, if you just look at some of the legislative initiatives that we've squashed, from fitted sheet legislation proposed in California, where they wanted to transform every single hotel from flat sheets to fitted sheets, would have cost tens of millions of dollars to do that. Taking away the democratic right for a closed ballot election, Employee Free Choice Act, online travel agency federal tax exemptions. There's so much, and it's on a local, state level, and it's on a federal level. So it's incumbent upon us as business owners, as hotel owners, to be in DC, to be lobbying our groups. We actually have a legislative day coming up next week where we have appointments with so many of our members with their elected officials, because who better to educate our elected officials than small business owners such as AAHOA owners.
Absolutely. And I want to get to that in a moment about the trips that AAHOA makes to the nation's capital. But Nitin, you would think in the United States, you want to open a hotel, you just buy the land, you construct the building, and you start doing business. If it were only that simple. There are many, many layers of government that are necessary to touch and to be involved with. And then once you've got your business going, of the regulations that go on from both the local level, the state level, and of course the federal level. How important is it for AAHOA members and AAHOA itself to be engaged in the political process and the regulatory process?
It's extremely important in any business, but more so in a business where capital expense is so high, you can't afford to make mistakes. It's not, once you start a construction on a hotel, you can't walk out of it. You have to go to the zoning issue, you have to deal with local officials, you have to deal with building officials, you deal with the state EPA, you deal with zoning. There are multitudes of regulations that affect opening an enterprise. And you're spending tens and millions of dollars of your money, your bank's money, and you need to be extremely careful. And to minimize the cost of doing all this, we need to be active in making sure the regulations are not overwhelming. I give you an example of, Dodd-Frank Act in banking. It's going to kill a lot of small community banks who has to come with enormous amount of capital for them to survive. They're treating Merrill Lynch the same as they would treat a small community bank in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Right.
And I think if you don't talk about it, speak about it, remember 3,000 pages of legislation, not a single congressman has the time to read it. Half of them are signing day before it was written up. It's a bizarre thing that is happening in Washington, D.C., and we need to really, really get engaged. For, one page or one line could hurt you.
But, you go from the Dodd-Frank Act that, of course, took place at the nation's capital, and as you said, 3,000 pieces of banking regulation that hits every financial institution in the country and around the world, really, all the way down to the level of Anil having to go meet with a local city council on a zoning issue. I mean, talk about that for a minute, because as a hotel owner, you're not going to be free of government. You are going to have to touch government in some way, shape, or form.
Right. No, and you're talking about city zoning ordinance. This will recollect Fred's memory. We had a small township in New Jersey that wanted to pass a zoning ordinance whereby the proposed ordinance was so ludicrous, they wanted to have one security guard for every 15 hotel rooms. So if you had 100 hotel rooms, you need 6 security guards. Now the area was safe, it was fine. We'd leave our cars and our cell phones in the car and the keys. It's not a bad area. But that local township somehow figured out a political way that if we can get rid of all of these independent mom and pop hotels, and they thought they were going to bring, Princeton real estate office buildings and shopping centers in Cinnamons in New Jersey. It's not happening. And Fred, Laura Lee, a lot of the AAHOA members got together. We lobbied, didn't want to listen. They passed it anyway. Next day, we filed a lawsuit against them in the state of New Jersey. And Fred and they came, and Fred was, I think Fred said to Laura, you know what? Even though we came and we did our best, I know Neil and Ashwin and these guys are not going to stop. And finally, you had to take a legal action, because sometimes to come in and say you need one security guard for every 15 hotel rooms. I told them, I said, what about the casinos? Donald Trump has, 4,000 rooms, so why don't you make him get it? And why is Cinnaminson Township so dangerous? Cinnaminson Township is it's a stroll, compared to the areas up in some of the areas in northern New Jersey and parts of New York area. They don't have that kind of ordinance. This township came up with this, and there's no way you're going to let that go. You have to fight it. And we told them, we said, we're going to fight it until the next elections. And next election, we're going to show up again. Now on, you're not going to come in, beat up the independent motel owner who's got 30 rooms and 40 rooms. And we had to stop. Either that or everybody would have lost their hotels, and they would have condemned it. And as Nitin said, it's a big capital investment. They'll come in with some fictitious value and say, this is what it's worth and this is what we're going to give you. So not only do they put laws and regulations on you, but they have the ability to take your business away completely. And to preserve that and keep that, you need to fight, and you need to be active, and you need to communicate with each other.
And I think what Anil brings up is a really, really good point, because mostly in general, lawmakers, city councils, county commissions, they think they're doing the right thing. And they think, or they've been sold a bill of goods, that if you take this action, all these wonderful things are going to happen. But if they don't have anybody from the hotel industry, they're explaining to them what will happen if you pass this certain regulation. They may just go about their merry way and put 20 hotel owners out of business. And sometimes I don't necessarily think it's that they want to do that, but they just don't know any better because they don't have the hotel experience, and that's what AAHOA can bring to the table.
I think small business owners, AAHOA members, have a great story to tell. They put their life savings in their property, and it builds employees, brings tax revenues to the local municipalities. So you want to protect that.
Well, and give us a couple of examples, Fred, about things that AAHOA has done. I know there was an example in Ohio where they wanted to limit how long somebody could actually stay in a hotel room, and then you had Florida, who was going to raise these astronomical rates for advertising, putting your hotel on the exit signs.
Ohio is a perfect example of how an egregious ordinance could be signed into law. In Ohio, at one point, you could only stay in your hotel. A guest could only stay in a hotel in Ohio for up to 30 days. So you have a relocation business, you may have a medical, you may have other needs where you need to stay in a hotel longer. AAHOA lobbied very strongly, and they changed that. I believe you can stay there for about a year now. So even on a federal level, the U.S. Small Business Lending Fund is another example that we may want to get to in another segment, right. But a lot of successes.
And then in Florida, of course, there was a case, and this is everywhere across the country, but you have the hotels that are on the exit signs or the official state-controlled signs, and I guess Florida thought they could make a whole lot of money by just jacking the price up a few 100%, and I guess they didn't realize that really impacts small business.
What happens when you go to local level? I personally tell you in one instant how ridiculous it gets. I was I just bought a land. I got a land permit. My building was about to go up, and Cobb County in Atlanta passed a law saying that if you have micro fridge in your room, you're considered extended stay, and if you don't have 3 acres, you can't build a hotel. And it was retroactive. And when I started to go to this meeting, I said, listen, every inn and suite, I was building Hampton Inn and Suite, I said, I have a micro fridge in it, but they're not anywhere near extended stay. It took me almost attending 3 different meetings to tell the commissioner and tell the planning board that you guys are writing it law. Your intention is to stop extended stay people hotel getting built because they were afraid that they were looking like an apartment. Kids were staying there and buses were coming to pick up the kids with no playground or nothing. They had a legitimate issue to address. But the way the law was written was so ridiculous, it could affect any hotel that had a suite or micro-fridge kitchen in it. So I personally lobbied with AHLA at that time, GHT, and literally were able to change the writings in it. otherwise, you could literally, by somebody's not ignorance, you could just can't build a hotel.
And that, again, as we close out this first segment, that is so important because elected officials don't always have bad ideas. They don't know their intentions are good, but
Right.
without the experience of the small business owner or the hotel owner explaining to them what real life impact this is going to have on
Right.
their industry, they don't know any better. And that's again, it's not because they want to try to do something wrong. They just don't have the information, which is what AAHOA can bring to the table.
Right.
And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the second half. We want to talk about what AAHOA does going to the nation's capital, and we'll do that coming up right after this. Welcome back to the AAHOA Educational Experience. I'm Chip Rogers, and with me this week is Fred Schwartz, president of AAHOA. Thank you, Fred. And Nitin Shah with Imperial Investments and Anil Patel with North Star Hotel Group. Thank you, gentlemen. In the first segment, we talked about what AAHOA can do in traveling really all over the country to help protect its members on local legislative issues. But one of the things that AAHOA does twice a year is go to Washington, D.C. And that, of course, is something that is going on almost now as AAHOA makes its way to Capitol Hill. And Fred, tell us about that and what that means to AAHOA members, but how important it is for the industry.
Sure. Well, the federal legislation can be tough on small businesses, and so we're up there lobbying. As a matter of fact, we had a great success towards the end of last year with the Small Business Lending Act, which is a piece of federal legislation that earmarked $30 billion to community banks to lend to small businesses. And that was funded it is funded by the Treasury Department. That's just to try to stimulate small business lending. And so we'll be up there again next week and fighting for more SBA loans, fighting for access to capital. That's the lifeblood of small businesses, for AAHOA members, and for this economy to get back rolling again.
And Nitin, I want to talk about a few of these issues or make our members aware. You have online travel company issues, which Congress is looking at that. You've got last year card check, which thankfully through AAHOA's efforts and many others, that was defeated. The Small Business Lending Act that Fred talked about, tourism, banking issues. The reality is that the United States government and Congress has their hands involved in a lot of things that will impact a hotel owner's life. And this is really one of the reasons why it's so important to go talk to them.
There are so many other issues that spring up every day, and I'll give you this loss share agreement about the banking. It's inadvertently hurting any business owner, not alone hotel owners, but by the way the design of loss share agreement is just they are making easier for acquiring bank to foreclose on existing property because government is handing out the checks to them. I mean, I don't think they meant to do it when they wrote it, but the consequences are loss of jobs, loss of businesses for the small business owners. So the issues are never going to stop. And I remember back in 1993 when I went to my first legislative affair, we started with the American Franchisee Association, and we had people from all walks of life, Dunkin' Donuts, Jiffy Lube, Kentucky Fried Chicken, hotel business owner. We all congregated together to really protect small business. And that needs to really happen on a big scale.
Absolutely. And Anil,
67% of the jobs are created by small business people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the engine of growth, engine of job opportunities. And a legislator needs to get that. Big corporations don't create that many jobs as many small businesses are.
Anil, I want to follow up on what he said and ask your opinion on this. What can Congress do at this point in time? I mean, if you're walking into, if you had the chance to go speak to Speaker Boehner and say, look, here's what's happening in the real world, here's what's happening on the streets, here's what you need to do to help us, what would you tell them?
I would say in terms of hotel owners that are having issues with their bank and they're not able to make their payments, the simplest thing, rather than incurring losses for the bank and for the regulators, is to give them some breathing room. Give them interest-only payment. If the interest rate is, beyond normal rate, if they're north of 5-6%, lower the rate to 2-3%. Give them 2 years to breathe, let the economy pick up, and then restart your payment. We do this in terms of forbearance agreements and amendments and modifications with existing lenders, private lenders, on a day-to-day basis with our businesses. And if they come out with some kind of a forbearance agreement across the board saying every hotel owner doesn't have to amortize their loan right now, and if the rate is beyond 6%, it's got to be below 6, but it can't be more than, or it can't be less than 3. And if you make an interest-only payment, I think that would help. That would help a lot of hotel owners keep their hotels. That would help the banks not lose money, because as soon as the bank forecloses on the property, they don't know how to run it. They'll hire a third-party management company. Third-party management company knows they're a babysitter, because they're going to run it for 6 months, 8 months, and when the bank sells it, they're going to sell it at a discount. So through this whole cycle, you got the bank losing money, you got the hotel owner losing their equity and their property and their pride, and then you have the government losing it if the bank that foreclosed on it and it's sitting on their portfolio, and then that bank gets gobbled up by another bank. The FDIC is going to throw in insurance money to fund that loss. And the way the whole system is, that bank that foreclosed on it and gets gobbled up by another bank, the other bank doesn't care if it's a $4 million loan, they'll sell it for $1 million. They're not even going to try to get $3 million for the property or say, let's wait and sell. Right now I have hotels that are not worth what they were worth in '06. So I'm not going out there and saying, now I'm going to sell them and liquidate them. I'm going to write it out through just forbearance agreement. So I think that's the simplest way without having too much legislation. And by doing that, it's gonna save so many jobs, save so many banks from losses, save so many owners from going through hardships. So it's a simple solution. I know it's simple. I explained it in 2 minutes, but you know how the system works.
And Chip, I want to make one point on this. They did the same thing for residential mortgages. They made all the big banks who got the TARP money or stimulus money, they made them work with the existing residential owners. So listen, to do the loan modifications, work with them, make sure they're not out of the home. I don't know why they can't do with the commercial properties. If you want to maintain people from not losing jobs, not losing business, and not having to shell out so much money in the loss share agreement, let them be there, work, figure out, do the double debt restructure, do the forbearance. It's the cheapest way, even for the government, to do that. You don't lose jobs, you don't lose businesses. In cases where they're foreclosing, some cases they're shutting down the hotels, putting the fence around. What happens to those employees? They lose jobs.
Absolutely.
So sometimes simple things in life are really very powerful.
We're coming to a close here, but Fred, I think these gentlemen bring up a good point. You can have a great message, and you can even have the opportunity to go speak to your elected official and deliver that message. But you've got to be prepared, and I think that's where AAHOA comes into play with these Capitol Hill visits. What does AAHOA do to get the guy from Dubuque, Iowa, who may have never been to the nation's capital, prepared to go in and talk to his or her congressman and deliver the message that needs to be delivered?
Well, we'll certainly have preparation beforehand on talking points, et cetera, and some coaching. But members, as I said, have a good story to tell. Be yourself and tell your tale of woe. And unfortunately, it is a tale of woe because the industry has been decimated with the economy. PKF did some survey a while back and showed 2009 net operating income in 2009 against 2008 was down over 30%, and 5% 08 against 07. So that's combined 35%. And while we're digging ourselves out now, we still have a long way to go, but we are digging ourselves out, and that's why in Anil and Nitin's comments about the banks, they need to take a different perspective and say, not encourage foreclosures, but discourage foreclosures, and work with the members, with the owners, because with loan modifications, et cetera, RevPARs, revenue per available rooms, are coming back, et cetera, and the stabilization of the market will occur.
Right. Well, that is a perfect segue into next week, but you're going to have to wait until next week because we're out of time for this week. So for Fred Schwartz, president of AAHOA, and Nitin Shah from Imperial Investments, and Anil Patel from North Star Hotels Group, gentlemen, thank you for being with us. And for you, if you'd like to contact us, you can reach me by email, chip@ahoa.com. That's chip@ahoa.com. And until next week, this is Chip Rogers saying so long, and thanks for watching the AAHOA Educational Experience.